This is Chaz from Exatech HD. Now for the past 1 year or so I wasn't able to upload any video to the channel due to some personal matters, but hopefully from now on I'll be able to continue uploading videos for you guys about comparison between GPUs, about PC builds, CPU comparisons, GPU comparisons, and maybe even in the future it will be some gadgets, hopefully. Now I bought a GPU which is the GTX 660. You probably can tell from the title of this video. I searched online, of course, and I saw a lot of reviews. I compared the sellers because I heard a lot of rumors that on Aliexpress it exists a lot of fake items. It exists a lot of scams and stuff like that's going on. So I bought this Gigabyte WindForce GTX 660. Now this is supposed to be better than the GTX 750 according to what I saw online from benchmarks and comparisons. Now the GPU arrived in a period of time of, like, the shipping took from China to Turkey, where I live, around 15 days or so, and it came in a box. And now the GPU itself, it was well protected in the box. It came with a 6 pins power connector and a converter basically, and I actually threw this in my main PC just to see if it boots, and actually it works, but I didn't exactly benchmark it and see how it performs in 2019, because that was actually the purpose of me buying a budget GPU, used GPU from a Chinese market, and see actually how it's gonna perform. So let's see how it performs. This GTX 660, it's a Gigabyte WindForce edition. It comes with 960 CUDA cores, and also it have overclock from the factory for the base clock with 1033 MHz and a boost clock of 1098 MHz. Processing technology is based on 28 nanometers, and memory clock of 6008 MHz, a memory size of 2 GB of GDDR5 VRAM, and a 192-bit of memory bus. Now for today's test I'm gonna use the MSI H110M Pro VD motherboard with the Pentium G4560 clocked at 3.5 GHz and a RAM of G.Skill 1 stick of 8 GB clocked at 2400 MHz, and the power supply, which doesn't matter actually, it's a Cooler Master 500 watt. Now for Apex Legends, the first test is at 1080p, everything low settings, TSAA enabled. Now we can see that the 0.1% low is at 10 FPS, which is kinda low, but I didn't notice it actually while I was testing it. And the 1% low is 21, which is kinda low also. And the minimum FPS, which is almost like the 1% low, and the average of 41, and the max, it's a whopping 128, which doesn't actually matter, the max FPS. What matters is the average and the minimum, which is barely playable at these settings and at this resolution. Now on 900p scenario with the same settings, we can see that max FPS dropped from 128 to 98, and the average FPS is 47, and the minimum FPS is 24, and 1% low is 22, and 0.1% low is 11, which is almost the same as the 1080p. So according to this, at 900p it's still kinda unplayable, or let's say when it comes to comparative games, it's kinda unplayable. Now in 720p situation with the same settings, we can see that the max FPS actually is 122, which is good, and the average FPS is 62, which is good, and the minimum FPS is 25,
and the 1% low is 23, the 0.1% low is 14, but the average FPS is actually 62, which is most of the times you're gonna be around 60s, which is acceptable by my standards at least. I would be probably playing at these settings. Now moving on to GTA 5 on 1080p with everything is high and texture is normal and high reflections and the ambient anti-oscillation is normal, we can see actually quite playable frame rates. Max FPS is 95, with the average is 72, with the minimum FPS is 56, and the 1% low is 53, and the 0.1% low is actually 48. It's very actually impressive and 1080p. Now in 900p situation, with the same settings, we can see that the max FPS actually dropped by 4 FPS at 91, and the average actually is 72. The minimum FPS dropped and the 1% low dropped by a couple of FPS, and 0.1% low also. But I think because of the things that it had in the screen, maybe different scenarios, explosions or some things, the cars, more texture, more things it can affect, but it's still acceptable and actually playable, and I would personally play on these settings and this FPS. Now on 720p scenario with the same settings, we have a max FPS of over 100, which is 104, and average FPS of 74, minimum FPS of 51, 1% low is 50, 0.1% low actually dropped to 41 due to probably higher CPU usage because we dropped the resolution down. It's a very smooth experience, very smooth, but I probably play it at 900p as minimum or even 1080 pixel on the GPU. Now on Fortnite 1080p epic quality and the shadows on medium, we see a different story here. Because of the higher CPU usage than GTA, we see the max FPS is 68, the average FPS is 52, minimum FPS is 32, the 1% low is 23, the 0.1% low is actually 15. I had a good experience, let's say. It's playable, but when it comes to comparative games, you want to make sure that you hit the 60 FPS as average. Now moving on to the 900p with the same settings, we see that max FPS is at 104 and the average FPS is 73, minimum FPS is 43, and the 1% low is 43, and the 0.1% low is actually 16. Now it's a bit better, of course. We have average FPS of over 70 FPS, and the minimum FPS is not that bad as the 1080p, which is still playable. Now on 720p situation with the same settings, oh boy, we've got a max FPS of 128, an average of 96 FPS, and a minimum of 71, and 1% low is 57. It's definitely a big jump. It's a very smooth experience, and the 0.1% low is 17, but I did not feel it. I did not see any drop while I was playing that. And you can also probably try to play at 1080p, but the rendering quality you can drop it to 720 pixels and you're gonna get almost the same results as this one. Now speaking of Rocket League, at 1080p max settings, anti-aliasing is by 2. The max FPS is 63, average FPS is 61, minimum is 60 almost, the 1% low is 50, the 0.1% low is 26, but it's a very smooth experience. I didn't feel anything, and it's definitely playable. And if it's playable at 1080p max settings, then if you drop that resolution, you're gonna have probably double these results. It's definitely recommended GPU for this type of games. So I paired this GPU with the Pentium G4 560. It's a dual core 4 threads CPU.
Now the reason why, because no one gonna buy a used GPU from a Chinese market and gonna pair it with 100 plus US dollars CPU. That's just gonna be stupid. So the 0.1% low dropped, probably because of the CPU, but you can't actually feel it. So what you can actually feel is the minimum or the 1% low. Would I recommend buying from Aliexpress? I would, yes, but in two conditions. If the seller have a lot of sold on the item, and also if the item have a lot of reviews, positive ones, because there's a lot of scams and things going on AliExpress. So the conclusion, if you're looking for a GPU to play esports games, then this is, I would recommend, such as Apex Legends, CSGO, Rocket League, and many others. But if you want to play AAA titles on this GPU, especially with high resolutions, then you should probably look somewhere else. And note that this GPU have only 2 GB of VRAM, which is kind of limited in 2019. Because of high resolutions, you may need actually more, and you're gonna have micro stutters and stuff in the gameplay. So guys, if you like this video, please share, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think, like, dislike if you dislike something, and make sure to follow me on Twitch. I stream almost every day there. Join in to have conversation, to talk, chat, and I will leave the links down in the description below. And also I'm gonna leave the link for the item I bought from AliExpress. So, see you guys.